Cirella died. If you're familiar with Ralph, he was 58 years old. He had been on that show he and Howard Stern had been friends for 40 years. And he was primarily Stern's stylist, but he was a very frequent contributor to that show. I didn't even know that he was ill. Everybody who works in the talk radio business, we all operate in the shadow of Howard Stern. And he's kind of largely been off a lot of people's radar for some time now because he's not on terrestrial radio anymore. But if you're familiar with that show, across numerous decades, by the way, you know who Ralph is. And I guess he had a rare form of lymphoma that they said was curable and treatable. And I guess I heard them doing some tributes to him this morning. And a lot of them, in addition to being quite sad, were really angry because he just wasn't taking care of himself and had it checked out sooner. So theoretically, something that he might have been able to live through, but I guess he was having a routine procedure yesterday morning, and his heart stopped. But he was 58 years old, and he had been a part of that show for about 35, 40 years. And I hadn't heard him in a while, but it wasn't something that I thought because, it wasn't on every day. But you'd see him pop up from time to time in things that Stern was involved with. They would point a camera at Ralph. See him on Letterman from time to time. So Ralph Cirella, dead at 58, and then Norman Lear died. But Norman Lear was much older, almost twice as old as Ralph. Norman Lear lived to be 101. And this was a guy, I was talking to Stansbury about this earlier, because if you're a Gen Xer, Norman Lear, whether you knew it or not, you didn't know the name Norman Lear until you got a little bit older and realized that this was the guy who was responsible for a lot of your favorite shows. So shows like All in the Family and Maude. I loved Good Times. I don't know how many people remember Good Times. J.J. Walker was the big breakout star from that show. The Jeffersons. I think he did Different Strokes.
I think so, yeah.
But this was a guy who was making he was making sitcoms that tackled a lot of social issues at a time where he really didn't have to do that. He could have cranked out sitcoms that people still would have enjoyed. But the trick with a show like that in his shows is that they weren't preachy. There's a lot of comedy where you feel like you're being lectured because they're trying to get a point across. Every form of comedy has a point of view, but when you're doing a network television sitcom, that's a much dicier proposition. So All in the Family, Archie Bunker, right?
I always want to die.
A lovable racist. I mean, there were a lot of, those were shows that you couldn't do them now, which seems counterintuitive because usually things evolve the other way. And I guess, television has evolved in some ways. But the shows that Norman Lear was putting, and again, I followed him on social media. If you followed Norman Lear on Instagram, he was still very active and lucid. This was not a guy who was like doddering around. But he's 101, so he was going to die at some point. And, if you go through his filmography, I'm reading a book actually, and about pop culture and music and television and all this in the early 70s and how there was really a sea change coming out of Vietnam and coming out of the Summer of Love. There was really a huge shift in pop culture and what people wanted from their pop culture. They wanted things a little bit more avant-garde. And Norman Lear was a big part of this story I'm reading. And so he was a guy who hadn't had much luck writing films. He had kind of, back then it was more of a studio system, and he was, employed by a couple of big agencies, and he was writing with a buddy of his, Bud Yorkin, who, if you're old enough, remember his name on credits. They developed Sanford and Son and One Day at a Time and all that. And Norman Lear started writing for Jerry Lewis in the 60s and, but there was a time where Norman Lear had like 4 of the top 5 highest rated television shows primarily in the 70s. But he was the guy that paid to get Spinal Tap made, right? Because Carl Reiner was a friend of his, and Rob Reiner, that was his first film that he directed. And these are all, Hollywood families that knew each other. And Norman Lear was the guy who paid for The Princess Bride to get made and Stand By Me. And those were all Rob Reiner films.
So he had a couple $1,000s.
He had a couple $1,000s. That's, if you're concerned about his net worth, which I suspect Poundcake probably is, it was probably a few $1,000s, yeah.
6 or 7 at least.
Yeah.
Ooh, I looked at it. It's nice.
What is it?
I kind of thought it would be more, though, since he's 101. $200 million.
$200 million. So he was very politically active. He's a progressive to the very end. He bought an original copy of the Declaration of Independence for $8 million.
What?
And toured it around. He toured it around the country for a while. He's like, "Hey, take a look at this. This is what this country's based on." And yeah,
years ago
it was about 20 years ago he did that, I think.
Okay, well then there must have been another one because I saw this in Oberlin like years and years ago. They had like some government document in a trailer. It was like in like a trailer attached to the back of a truck, and it was like a mobile museum. You could walk in and see this document underneath all this glass. I don't know if it was a Declaration.
I was going to say it might not be the mobile Declaration of Independence trailer.
I don't think so.
Please don't bang on the glass.
Yeah, it's torn around like the Wienermobile.
Yeah. So, yeah, Norman Lear, he was 101. And he kept creating things to the very end. And he just had an unbelievable career. But he was a guy who was writing television shows that were he couldn't get anything made back in the day. Every network would pass on it. And I think CBS finally said, okay, fine, All in the Family. And he really had to fight to put in that show what he wanted. But it was a big deal at the time. All in the Family had been the #1 show on network television for 5 years straight. They had 60% of the viewing public watching that show. So on Saturday nights on CBS, 50 million people were watching All in the Family. Like if you had a show now that got 3 million people to watch it, people would be popping champagne in the office. So a couple of years ago, they rebooted One Day at a Time with a Latino cast. And I think that was pretty popular. People watched it. The metrics are different, obviously, for Netflix. But and then they would do like these live reboots of these classic sitcoms like Kimmel. And you ever watch any of those? They did All in the Family with like this all-star cast. And Jamie Foxx played George Jefferson. And ABC was doing those for a while. So Norman, he was a World War II pilot. Like a legit dude. So, but the people of his generation are obviously going away. Carl Reiner died last year. And I'm sure they've had the obituary for Norman Lear ready for 10 years. When these people hit a certain age, you got to have the obituary ready.
Who?
So at a moment's,
Who?
Publications, newspapers, websites.
But doesn't like the family write the obituary and send it to them, or they all write their own?
Well, I don't mean like what goes at the. No, I mean like a publication would, like Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, would have an obituary ready. So all these old celebrities, right? Bob Barker just died in August. All these publications have those ready. So when they go, hey, Bob Barker just died, they just go send.
Yeah.
And it posts. Mel Brooks, he's alive. He turned 97 this past summer. Dick Van Dyke is still alive. He's almost 100. Bob Newhart is 93. He looks like a skull with skin on it. But he's alive. Clint Eastwood's 93. Somehow Shatner looks the best. Shatner's 92, and I think he still looks great.
He looks great.
For being 92 years old, Shatner looks
chubbier than
great.
Those guys, and so I think it keeps him smooth.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It puffs him up?
Yeah, well, it smooths out the wrinkles.
Hard to be chubby and wrinkly, yeah.
It gives him a boyish look, being chubby like that. So, yeah, Norman Lear. And again, Mel Brooks was really good friends with these guys. So out of that group, he's kind of the last man standing. Carl Reiner gone and Norman Lear. But it's hard to, it's hard to be that prolific and creative and have a career like that.
I like when they do those, like, they bring it back and they have current celebrities play those roles. I think it's fun. Of his old shows.
those live, they did Facts of Life, and they did, they were trying to make it like an appointment television thing.
Yeah. I think it's fun. I think it's a fun thing. They did the Jefferson, or they did All in the Family. It was a good time. I think they did a Jeffersons one, too.
They did. Jamie Foxx was George Jefferson.
Yeah.
He doesn't listen to the show, Alan.
It's okay.
I know. Listen to a different show.
Janet Jackson started on Good Times. And maybe he bought that copy of the Declaration of Independence from Nicolas Cage. Well, Nicolas Cage didn't sell it. He just stole it, yeah?
Yeah, but he might have sold it afterwards.
I saw that movie for the very first time last summer, so it's very fresh in my mind.
I love that movie,
Super
dude.
long movie, isn't it?
No,
it's
like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That's like no joke. I don't know if it just came out at the right time in my life. I think I was in high school. It's probably like 14, 2004, 2003. That was like my introduction to figure amounts was National Treasure. I'm like, this is so exciting. I'm learning. I feel like the rush of the action, but you're also trying to solve a mystery. Oh, I love that movie.
Well, yeah, everybody was like, oh, you got to see his movie. You got to see his movie. And it just happened to be starting when I was punching around. I'm like, all right, I'll watch.
Did you
My
like
kid
it?
can watch it. I did. It was very enjoyable. What's not to like? It's got the guy from The Hangover in it.
Yeah, he's like a dork, like a computer nerd.
Yeah, that poor guy. I'm waiting for him to he plays the straight guy in every movie he's in. He's the dude.
Jason Bateman.
He's the dude on the roof in The Hangover. So you see him at the beginning, and you see Justin Bartha as the actor. You see him twice in the movie. They're like, hey, obviously nobody knows if a movie's going to be a big, big hit. But when it is a hit, you're like, well, I'm in The Hangover. They're like, no, you're not. Bradley Cooper and Zach Galifianakis are in The Hangover. No, I'm the guy on the roof. There's a guy on the roof?
Yep.
Yeah, that's me. And they keep saying
the whole movie's about that guy trying to find
getting him
guy.
off. Yeah, he's the guy getting married.
Yeah. Well, they don't even know that he's on the roof most of the movie.
Well, they find out.
Alan, I've never heard of this Spotify, is it? I only am familiar with the iHeartRadio application.
Mm-hmm.
iHeartRadio is fantastic. I mean, is there anything better than iHeartRadio? I don't think so. iHeartRadio.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what do you want? For once, this company hit Christmas and didn't fire 1,700 people. Like Spotify.
There's time.
Yeah, there is time, actually. It's a couple of weeks still till Christmas. Usually when they like to do it. Told you a story a couple of weeks ago about a girl. I don't know if it was in Medina or Parma or somewhere. The lady who got arrested because she whipped her Chipotle order at the woman. Yeah. Oh, this was in Parma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Viral,
we played the video, and a lady was at Chipotle, and the employee told her she had to wait, or she didn't get it right, or some nonsense. Somebody making really good decisions in life. 39-year-old Rosemary Hain got sentenced. 1 count of assault. You didn't get your burrito bowl the way you like it, and this is how you respond? Said the judge. This is not Real Housewives of Parma, but please put a pin in that, because I think we'd all like to see that.
Do you want to walk in her shoes for 2 months and learn how people should treat people, or do you want to do your jail time?
I'd like to walk in her shoes. She didn't get a slap on her wrist. She's going to learn how to work in fast food, and hopefully it'll be good.
And no one deserves that. So I thought, why should the city taxpayers pay for her and feed her for 90 days in jail if I can teach her a sense of empathy?
Right. They said you can go to jail or you can work at a fast food restaurant.
Does she still get the charge, though?
She probably doesn't get paid either. Does she make money?
I don't know about that. What do they pay him to make license plates? Nickel a day?
Maybe.
I'm just like, Chipotle workers actually make, I'm not going to say they're rich, but they make pretty good money.
But I'm saying if this is a punishment for her, I can't imagine they're like, you get to go.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. I wonder if she still gets like the misdemeanor or felony charge, because, I mean, you assault someone with a burrito.
I do love people, though, that are just goddamn psychotic, and they just can't control their impulses, and they just can't let it go. She was like, because you go through the motions. These people, they don't care. They're pissed that they got scooped up. She's telling, I'm really sorry. There's no excuse for my behavior. But my food was terrible, and it looked gross. And the judge's like, I don't care, lady. We're way past. Yeah. If I showed you how my food looked and how my food looked a week later from the same restaurant, it's disgusting looking. What does a week later have to do with
like a different employee made it?
And
like,
we're all, by the way, all of us are going to these places. The food never looks the way it looks in the ad, if that's what you're talking about. We all know this, and somehow the rest of us are not throwing our food in people's faces. So they said, you're going to work for 6 months at a fast food joint.
That's a long time.
180 days in jail and suspended 90 of those days. He said he would give her 60 days jail credit if she worked 20 hours a week at a fast food restaurant for 2 months. And of course she's going to do that.
Make it horrible for her. Give her the worst jobs. Cleaning toilets.
The woman who worked at Chipotle said she quit because she was traumatized.
I believe it.
She now works somewhere else. I think that they should let people throw crap at her the whole time she's working the counter.
Oh, yeah.
They go, hey, this is the lady who she's... And by the way, imagine being one of the other people who already work there. And now you got to train this dope how to do right. Because they didn't say you got to work at a Chipotle. They say you got to work at a fast food restaurant.
Oh, no.
No, she should take that girl's spot, I think.
No, because then that girl doesn't have a job.
She already quit.
She quit.
Well, I guess.
So now they're down a guy.
I'm sure they've replaced her since. That was like
also,
7, 8
they would
months
treat
ago.
her terribly. Not that she
That's the
deserves to be
point.
treated right, but like working in an environment where you just assaulted one of their employees.
Because
Well, but also like 2 wrongs don't make a right. I'm being cheeky. People, you should get to throw stuff at her. But the whole point is that she's supposed to learn that, yeah, a lot of those jobs suck and people are dicks when they come in and their lettuce doesn't look right.
You know what, though?
For Christ's sake.
Honestly surprised at the number of people who have never worked with the general public, whether it's fast food or retail or bartending. Like, it's shocking to me the number of people who just, or they do. I can't imagine you would treat someone that way if you've been in their shoes, right?
I don't
Well,
know. There are a lot of people like he would want revenge.
There are a lot of people working retail who don't like the job, but they're not particularly skilled at anything else, so they've got that job, but they don't love it. But
what I'm saying is people like her who have clearly never worked with the general public that are always a problem. I feel like people who have had fast food or retail or bartending jobs don't act like this. They're not the ones throwing things or starting fights. Or,
yeah, maybe, but there's all but I don't know that blanket statement would hold. There's a lot of people who have worked retail and they're so happy they're out. You know how in high school the sophomores are the biggest dicks because they're happy they're not the freshmen anymore. So
or like they've earned it. Like I did this job, I know how easy or hard it is.
Maybe. I mean, I think a good rule of thumb is no matter what you do for a living, don't throw your food in people's faces. Something you've already paid for, by the way, dummy. It's like people burning their jerseys that they paid for.
And also,
why don't you just take those $75 and throw it in the bonfire?
But you're also,
and keep the jersey on the rack.
You're contaminating food too when you throw a burrito over like the little glass shield there.
Now they got to get rid of everything.
Now all your little nasty little.
There ain't no glass shield. She was at the counter. They're throwing it in their face. Oh. What glass shield? It's not a salad bar.
Well, no. When you first go to Chipotle. Like,
I see what you mean.
Where you order, like I'm sure there's little pieces of rice like in everyone's salad, so they have to throw the whole thing away.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Because your brain you're not acting logically. You don't have impulse control. So your brain is not saying, well, if I do this, then this and this and this will happen. So you're not thinking clearly, but it's like, come on, man. So I would love for them to announce publicly where this woman works.
They would never do that.
No, they wouldn't. But I mean, just to see.
But if she has the choice of where she works, she's going to probably choose the easiest. She probably knows someone that works in fast food. They're like, girl, no one even comes to my Chipotle or no one even comes to my Wendy's. So she'll pick up spots where it's super secluded and not busy. And, she don't have to work as hard.
They should make her work at a Chick-fil-A where she has to say my pleasure every 5 seconds.
She has to stand outside
with an
in
iPad.
the 20-degree weather.
Those Chick-fil-A workers love their job. They would not stoop to that level. They enjoy being outside in the rain. At least that's
I will
what they tell
say,
me.
I like judges who give punishments like this. I like non-traditional punishments.
I think it's more effective.
I think it is too. Like
standing with the sign or something.
Yes, when they make you
otherwise you have to pay like a fine or something. Like,
Yeah,
she's not. But like, this actually like, is it? You know, I think she's going to learn a lesson.
I enjoy this.
Yeah.
So the judge decrees that he becomes my butler.
Your butler.
Right. He cooks my food, he cleans my house, he does all my shopping for me, and there you go. That's your program.
Some judge is a big Seinfeld fan. I'm getting the vibe off that. I'm going to break here. I will have those Cleveland Orchestra passes for you. The summer 2024 schedule is up, and the tickets are available to see those guys do the iconic score for Raiders of the Lost Ark next June, and I'll get you a couple of tickets coming back.
The Alan Cox Show on 100.7 WMMS and everywhere you go on our free iHeartRadio app.
Weekdays on 100.7 WMMS and 24/7 on our free iHeartRadio app.
Rover's Morning Glory.
The company is developing a product to let you lucid dream so you can use your brain to solve problems while you sleep.
This is a waste of time to me.
Why is it a waste of time?
Because I barely use my brain as it is. I mean, outside of work, 25 minutes total is probably what I use my brain for. When I go to the gym, I'm not using it.